It includes a broad range of crops and animals for food production. At least all the definitions we looked at, some of the more credible definitions. Critical thing is that animals kept as pets are not really within the definition of urban agriculture. Unless food's produced, it's not really urban ag, it's something else. We certainly have an animal ordinance that addresses pets. Issues, try to provide a framework here. Should urban agriculture be permitted as a primary use? Should it be permitted as an accessory use? So let me give you an example of a primary use. Let's say there's a subdivision that has a common area, and it's in a residential district, and they want to have a garden in that common area that everybody in the neighborhood can come and take part in that. Actually, I'm not sure that's even a primary use, because that could be secondary to the housing there. But let's say someone has, here's a better example. Someone has a vacant lot, and it's in a residential zoning district, and they say, I want to, or some organization wants to just put in a garden there that's a community garden. Currently, it's not, it doesn't appear that that's a permitted use. I would say it's probably not a permitted use. Accessory use, garden, in a backyard garden, that's an accessory use. Keeping chickens in a chicken coop, that's in your backyard, where residential is the primary use, that's an accessory use. But it's important, I think, to make those distinctions. Potential benefits of urban agriculture: self-sufficiency, smaller environmental impact. I think most of us are familiar with the local food movement, eating local versus having food shipped long distances to your table. And just lifestyle issues. Some people want to live that lifestyle, but they still want to be living in a city. Versus the potential negatives: noise, odor, disease, attraction of pests, even some aesthetic impacts, perhaps. Aesthetic impacts. I highlighted this because this is something that I think could easily be overlooked. I think in our current zoning district, there's nothing that says someone can't put a vegetable garden in their front yard, or how much that should cover a front yard. Maybe that's okay, but I think in some subdivisions it would raise some eyebrows. Just can't really talk about this without talking about the Gardner Community Garden. This has been a real success in Gardner, I believe. It's on about 4 or 5 acres south of the Divine Mercy Parish, next to Westside Park. It includes a 4-acre communal garden for local organizations, but also plots for individuals and families that they can rent on a very affordable basis. Crops that are not needed by plot tenants are donated for Gardner residents in need, so it's really a positive thing. I think a lot of people like it, but it's also an opportunity to do that without having to do it on your own property, perhaps, and impact neighbors. Although I don't think vegetable gardens are typically much of a negative impact to neighbors. So when you look at the code issues surrounding urban ag, you really need to look beyond just the zoning regulations. The animal ordinance is in Title 6 of the code. Currently, if someone wants to have some kind of agricultural animal, it requires a special use permit in areas that are not zoned for agricultural use. This type of special use permit out of this title can be issued by the police chief, by the police department. It doesn't require going to the governing body. It's an annual type of permit. Title 8 of the Property Maintenance Ordinance. It limits the height of grass, weeds, and other vegetation. So certainly that would have to be looked at to provide for urban agriculture, if that was the desire of the City Council. Title 18 of the zoning ordinance. Title 18 is the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance, in the agricultural district, there's no minimum lot area required. Clearly, agriculture is permitted in that district, but setbacks from residential districts are required for keeping animals. In the R1 and R2 districts, those are the single-family and two-family zoning districts. A special use permit is required for the keeping of farm animals on lots less than 3 acres. Zoning code, so we currently, it's not that someone can't currently keep animals, they just have to have a special use permit from the governing body. Other things to think about. Zoning code permits no more than one accessory structure on a residential lot. So if you want to have a tool shed in your backyard, but you also want to have a chicken coop, currently the zoning district, it's not permitted. It's not permitted to have 2 tool sheds in your backyard, strictly speaking. And a lot of people probably didn't know that, but very restrictive. So this is just a map showing the residential zoning. Clearly it covers a lot of Gardner. So really when we're talking about urban agriculture, this is the area of the city that would pertain to. We're talking about permitting it on a less restrictive basis in residential districts. So we looked at other cities, and I'll highlight 2. Chickens in Kansas City. And there's a lot of aspects to urban ag, but we try to focus on what is relevant today and what's of greatest concern today, and it seems to be chickens are the biggest issue currently. In Kansas City, Missouri, they're permitted in all residential districts with standards. There's a 100-foot minimum setback from any residence or dwelling, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes how that would actually work in real life. Animals and fowl shall be enclosed on all sides and shall not be allowed to run or fly at large. So that would require some kind of enclosure. If you're talking about fowl, birds, you're talking about something that goes over the top of a run. There is a way to control chickens by clipping their wings, but this says it has to be enclosed. No more than 15 chickens, no roosters within 300 feet of a neighboring dwelling. Chickens in the Olathe regulations, a special use permit is required. Until recently, there weren't any setbacks, as I understand, required, but recently they adopted some standards. They require a 9-foot setback from property lines where you keep the chickens, and a 40-foot setback from neighboring dwellings. There's no standard for the number of chickens. That is something that's determined by this special use permit. So just to give you an idea, when we look at some of the standards that are applied, not just in Kansas City or Olathe, but in other cities as well, one of the common things you see are setbacks from neighboring dwellings. What I've tried to do here is put this in the Gardner context. And this is a subdivision in Gardner, typical lot. Gardner is a city that has a lot of these smaller lots, these 8,000 square foot lots. There aren't many lots that are in the 1 acre, 2 acre range. There are some lots that are large, but not very many. So really this is the situation we're talking about. We're talking about keeping chickens in the backyard. On this map, the red square, or the red rectangle, represents a coop, and that's about the size of the coop. The black rectangle represents the size of a run, chicken run, that could be enclosed. And if you look at those distances, from the dwelling on the left, the distance is 40 feet. From the dwelling on the property, the distance is 22 feet. The distance from the dwelling on the right is 55 feet. So just some conclusions, some general conclusions. I think with gardens it would be helpful to clarify the permitted size and location. I anticipate that the popularity of this, there could be some conflicts. To some people, why would it be a problem to have a vegetable garden in the front yard? Other people, they might see that as unsightly. Keep in mind that a vegetable garden is not very attractive in the months that it's dormant. Chickens, address the need for enclosures. So if it was the desire of the City Council to look at an ordinance that would provide more clarity about under what conditions chickens would be permitted, you'd want to address the need for enclosures such as coops and runs. You want to have setbacks. You want to put limits on the number of chickens, in my opinion. Keep in mind, a lot of ordinances will limit a lot to 1 rooster or no roosters. That's pretty common. One of the problems you have with addressing or controlling the number of roosters is it's difficult to tell the sex of a chick when you buy a chick. It's not like getting a cat or a dog. So what you think is a hen could grow up to be a rooster. Um,
I have that problem all the time.
yeah.
Awful.